The new RNC chairman, Michael Whatley, joins us now. Sir, great to have you with us.
It's good to be on with you.
Mike, it's your signal's breaking up a little bit, so let's hope it sounds great as we talk to you. But how you settling into the new gig? It must be you must feel like you're running a million miles an hour right now.
Yeah, we got a lot going on. It was really fun to be with the president down in Georgia and Florida yesterday for a series of events, and today was up in Congress meeting with Steve Scalise and a number of others up here. And we're running 100 miles an hour.
I saw all these videos yesterday of Donald Trump in Georgia, namely the ones of him at Chick-fil-A, buying shakes for everybody. What was it like being on the campaign trail with him and seeing him in that kind of retail politics environment?
You know, he is so good at just connecting with normal people. The Chick-fil-A stop was absolutely hysterical because it was in a precinct that's 94% black and 94% Democrat. And he walked in there and got absolutely mobbed. And just, it was authentic. It was real. You all saw the TV hits on it, but even once the cameras turned off, he kind of stayed there and was mobbed talking to people for another 10 or 15 minutes. And then when we head to the airport, he's spending 10, 15, 20 minutes with all of the police officers and all of the military guys that are there to protect him. And, he is just really, truly a man of the people. And you can tell that it drives him every day when he wakes up. We're going to go fight for Americans.
And as I mentioned at the outset, I do want to have a conversation with you here about election integrity, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But one more thing on President Trump's campaign, at least. I saw this morning that President Trump is now indicating that he would like to debate Joe Biden early and often. What can you tell us about the debates and what the President Trump, would like to see out of them?
Yeah, the president has made it absolutely clear that he will debate Joe Biden anywhere, anytime, on any platform. And I think that the American people absolutely deserve that. We've never had a contrast between two candidates that is bigger and more of a bright line between Joe Biden and President Trump. And, we have issues with the debate commission because they want to hold these debates after people have already started voting. We think you need to have them early. We think you need to have multiple debates. And, we're kind of waiting to see what President Biden's team is going to come up with as their excuse for not wanting to put Biden on a debate stage with the president. But we are totally ready to go.
I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but if the first debate occurs as intended, how long after the beginning of voting would it actually be the first time people see these two men debate in this cycle?
Well, I mean, by then we expect we're already going to have 1 million people that have cast votes. By the proposed third debate, they're talking about almost 9 million people will have cast their votes before they get a chance to see the debate. So, and look, the American people know the record that President Trump put together. They know about his great economy. They know that he closed the border. They know that we were in a strong place across the world and that under Joe Biden, everything is a train wreck. But you really do want to have an opportunity to see that debate before 9 million people go vote.
Will NBC be among the debate moderators? I noticed that they hired your predecessor for like 8 minutes, and then they fired her because she was too controversial. Never mind, they had Michael Avenatti live on the air from prison this week. Is NBC going to be allowed to have moderators for these general election debates?
I think the biggest question is going to be whether or not that the staff talent that they have is going to allow them to cover the debate. You really is Chuck Todd going to let them talk about President Trump or moderate a debate? Look, the hypocrisy that we saw in terms of them having Jen Psaki walk straight out of the White House onto the MSNBC set, not as a contributor, but as a host, and then they have a complete meltdown about hiring a Republican, absolutely ridiculous.
But as far as excluding them as a moderator, is that on the table?
Look, I would say this. The president has been very clear. He will debate Joe Biden anywhere, anytime, on any platform.
Okay, so we're not discussing moderators today, but we are. But for now, it is likely that that these big legacy outlets, and usually the reason for this is because they've got the resources, they've got the money, they can put the stage together. Those big legacy outlets, some of them could be among the moderators for the debate.
Yeah, conceivably they could, but I think, and one of the big things that we're going to fight about is who's going to be the moderators. I mean, in 2020, you had one of Joe Biden's former staffers as a moderator for the debate. That's just a little bit biased, we think.
Just a little. All right, let's move to the issue of election integrity. Prior to you arriving at the RNC, there were lots of questions about what's the RNC up to when it comes to making sure that we can have faith in our election. Give us a sense of what you discovered when you arrived at the RNC and what speed you're moving at now.
We are moving very quick, very aggressive. And I will say this, that prior to becoming the chair, I had been serving as the general counsel here. And so I had actually started to put together our election integrity program. And so we obviously have juiced that up a bunch. Look, when I got my very first phone call from President Trump to talk about taking over the RNC, the one thing that he continually stressed was we've got to have election integrity. We have to be able to protect the ballot. The RNC for 100 years plus has all about get the vote, get the vote, get the vote. Now we have two missions: turn out the vote and protect the ballot. And so we really, truly have built an election integrity program, and we're going to do two things. First off, we are going to make sure that we have good rules of the road, right? We want, protections for absentee ballots. We want voter ID. We don't want drop boxes. These are the things that we're going to fight for in every state to make sure that we have fair, accurate, secure, and transparent elections. And if we don't get them, we're going to go to court. We're going to file suits. We've already filed 80 different lawsuits in 24 different states around the country to make sure that we have good, solid, guardrails in place to protect the elections. The second thing we're going to do is we are going to put people in the room. We want tens of thousands of volunteers, thousands of attorneys in every single state across the country to make sure that, we are protecting the ballot. I really, truly want people in the room when the votes are being cast and when they're being counted.
RNC Chairman Michael Whatley, compare the current posture towards 2020, if you will, because one of the things I recall from 2020 is that a number of courts were throwing out challenges in the wake of the election saying, hey, Republicans, you should have raised these challenges before the election. I know you're talking about right now many of these lawsuits all across the country that are being brought up now. How different is the legal approach at this moment than it was in 2020?
We are much more aggressive. We are much more proactive than we were in 2020. And I think, look, it is far better to have a police car parked in front of a storefront window than to call them after a rock gets thrown through it. What we want to make sure that we're doing is we are having people in the room when the votes are being cast and when they're being counted. And one thing that we've got to keep in mind is that prior to the 2020 election, the RNC was actually under a court order and could not engage in election integrity mission. And so now that consent decree is gone, and we are fully able to ramp up and make sure that it's easy to vote and hard to cheat.
What does the opposing force look like right now? What are Democrat lawyers doing across the country, and does it have you concerned?
Yeah, look, I think that they are going to spend a ton of money that is going to be putting, lawsuits together on their end. They have already done it. But I think, the biggest thing that we're seeing from those guys is that they are playing defense everywhere we go. We are the ones that are playing offense. We're playing offense politically. We're playing offense litigation-wise in terms of the election integrity effort. And frankly, they are more than welcome to go on MSNBC and shout from the rooftops about, how terrible Republicans are, because we want common sense election integrity. Over 70% of the American voters want voter ID. They want common sense protections on absentee ballots, and they want ballots that are going to be counted on Election Day. So we feel like we are absolutely in the mainstream of, like I said earlier, make it easy to vote and hard to cheat.
One of the things I've been encouraged by is that at least I believe 27 states have either banned or restricted the use of what we refer to now as Zuckerbucks, which are these rich lefties come in and they spend all this money on the election systems of areas that have a lot of Democrat voters primarily. Is that something that the RNC is going to stay active in? Oh,
yeah. Look, we have filed lawsuits in multiple states to make sure that we ban Zuckerbucks. And we've got really good wins in places like North Carolina, Georgia, and Wisconsin, where we've been able to make sure that you can't do that. And so in other states where they're still valid, we're going to go challenge them, and we're going to continue to fight on this.
For those states that still have vulnerabilities, like I think of like a California, and their ballot harvesting is completely legal there, even though it's entirely corrupt. What is the RNC and the Republican parties all across the country? What are they going to be doing in those states?
In those states, we are going to ballot harvest. If it is legal, if it is a tool that the Democrats are using right now, we are going to use it. We actually, for the first time during this 2022 election cycle, put together a ballot harvesting program out in California, and we got a number of wins. We actually had a number of wins that we won in districts that Joe Biden had carried, that nobody thought we were going to be able to win, because we were able to use that tool in our toolkit. Look, we don't like ballot harvesting. We want to make sure where we can get rid of it, we can. But if it's legal, we're going to use it.
And then as far as the strategy for encouraging Republicans to actually participate, I mean, if some number of the people that you're speaking to right now, and certainly Republicans across the country, are very disheartened about the state of our election system, to the point, and we saw it, say, in the special election in Georgia a couple years ago, to the point that they say, well, I don't even believe it. I don't think the system has enough credibility. My view, RNC Chairman Michael Whatley, has been, you need to overwhelm the election. That's the answer here, that people need to overwhelm the polls with votes. How are you focusing on those voters to make sure that they do appear and they do pull the lever?
Yeah, so there's two things that we want to do, and you're absolutely right. I mean, we were talking with President Trump earlier, and I think, I threw out the phrase "too big to rig." And the next thing I know, we were at a rally a couple of weeks later in Greensboro, North Carolina, and they had "too big to rig" signs that were going up all across the audience there. So that was pretty fun to see. But look, our Get Out the Vote efforts are going to be really focused on a couple of things. First off, we know over 50% of all voters are going to vote before Election Day. We've got to talk to them before they vote. So we've got to make sure that we have an early vote program that's out there, and we're very aggressively talking to people that before they go vote, right? So we're trying to bank the vote with those early voters that are already going out there. The other thing that we're trying to do is make sure that those low propensity voters, the people who, if they vote, they're going to vote Republican, but they've only voted once out of the last 4 or 5 election cycles, we got to turn them out. We got to go communicate with those folks directly. Then the last thing we need to do is really focus on these minority communities that are breaking away from the Democrats. Black voters, Hispanic voters, Asian American voters are all leaving the Democratic Party in droves. We got to make sure that we get them past the independent over to the Republican candidates. And so we're reaching out and talking to those communities as well. So when we have a real true get out the vote operation, and we match that with our Protect the Ballot programs and the election integrity programs, where people trust the outcome that is going to be fair, that makes it a lot more likely for them to go vote.
The last piece of this is you talk about low propensity voters. Some people have never voted. There's people who still need to be registered to vote who might be inclined to support Donald Trump and other Republicans on the ballot this year. I've heard in the past that, outdoorsmen and hunters and gun shows and churches, there's all sorts of places you can go. I know Scott Pressler up in Pennsylvania, who the RNC is doing some work with now to get people registered to vote, has been working on that. What kind of voter registration effort is the RNC undertaking?
It's a massive effort, and we work with all of our state parties to make sure that they're the ones that are out there on the ground. But I'll tell you this, nobody has ever created more voters than Donald Trump. I mean, at rally after rally after rally, I have people come up to me and say, I'm 63 years old. I've never voted in my life. I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. Or I've had people come up and say, I'm 55 years old. How do I register to vote? Because I want to vote for Donald Trump. It is remarkable to look at the number of people that he has generated as new voters, both in 2016 and in 2020. And we're very excited about having him at the top of the ticket here in 24.
All right. RNC Chairman Michael Whatley, new to the job, but already moving, as I said, a million miles an hour. Sir, thank you very much. Good to have you on the show today, and look forward to talking to you again soon throughout this election.
Yeah, look, I really appreciate it, and thanks to your listeners as well.